Today, we are diving deep into a really fascinating text, the Mahāvedallasutta. It's basically a recorded conversation between two of the Buddha's sharpest disciples. And we're going to unpack their discussion about, how our minds actually work, what we feel, and what it really means to be free. So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get into the difference between wisdom and consciousness. Then we'll look at the mind's inner workings, and after that, the very fabric of life. From there, we'll see how to build what's called the right view. And finally, we'll explore the different paths to freedom. All right, let's start at the very beginning with the question that kicks this whole thing off. And it's a brilliant place to start because it gets right to the heart of everything. What does it actually mean to have wisdom? So the disciple Mahākoṭṭhita asks this really sharp, direct question to the elder Sāriputta. He's not just looking for a simple definition here. He's trying to get at the very essence of what it means to lack wisdom. And Sāriputta's answer? It's incredibly precise. Being unwise has nothing to do with your IQ or how many books you've read. It's a very specific thing. It's the failure to understand the fundamental operating system of our reality, the Four Noble Truths. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. This slide lays out a critical difference. Wisdom, paññā, is about a deep understanding of how reality is structured. But consciousness, vijnana, is the part of you that just registers the raw data of experience. Pleasure, pain, whatever. So one is about deep insight. The other is about direct awareness. And notice the purpose. Wisdom is something you have to develop, while consciousness is something you have to fully understand. But here's the twist. Right after making that distinction, Sāriputta says you can't actually pull them apart. They're totally linked, like two sides of the same coin. Think about it. To truly understand suffering, you have to be conscious of the feeling of suffering. You just can't have one without the other. So building on that connection between wisdom and consciousness, the dialogue now kind of zooms in to look at the other key players that create our moment-to-moment experience of being alive. So you've got this team of three, and they're always working together. Vedana is that raw feeling. Ouch, that's pleasant, that's neutral. Saññā is the perception that puts a label on it. That's not just a color, that is blue. And then vijnana, consciousness, is the big boss, the awareness that knows both the feeling and the perception are happening at the same time. And this just shows so brilliantly how they're all stitched together. I mean, you don't just feel a sharp sensation, right? You perceive it as pain from a needle. And you're conscious of that entire package as one single event. They are fundamentally intertwined. Now the conversation takes a really interesting turn. It pivots away from the subtle details of the mind to the nature of life itself. What are the invisible forces that actually power our physical bodies and make us living, breathing beings? Our five senses are kind of like field agents, right? Each one goes out and gathers a specific kind of intel from the world. But Sāriputta explains that they all report back to a central command center, the mind, or mano. The mind is their refuge, the place where all this scattered data gets put together so it actually makes sense. So how do you explain what keeps a body going? Well, Sāriputta uses this absolutely beautiful and powerful analogy. He says the life force, ayu, and the body's natural heat, usma, are completely dependent on each other. You can't have the light from a lamp without the flame, and you can't have the flame without the light it gives off. It's the same with life force and body heat. This comparison is just wow. It's so profound. Because on the surface, an advanced meditator in this deep state of cessation might look totally lifeless, no conscious activity. But look closer. Sāriputta points out the huge difference. In the meditator, the life force and heat are still there, and the senses are intact, just quiet. In a dead body, those core components are just gone. Okay, so we know wisdom is the goal and the mind is the tool, but how do we actually do it? How do we cultivate this true understanding? The dialogue now shifts and basically gives us a practical instruction manual. And it's this simple but really powerful two-step formula. First, you need some good input from the outside, the voice of another, which means listening to solid teachings. But that's not enough on its own. Second, you need to put in the internal work, wise attention, which means you reflect on those teachings correctly and really apply them to your own life. And this right view doesn't just float there by itself, it's held up by these 5 pillars. You need ethical conduct or virtue to give you a stable foundation. You keep learning and discussing to deepen your understanding. And then the meditation practices of calm and insight are what really turn that knowledge into a real, life-changing experience. And all of this brings us to the grand finale of the conversation, the nature of liberation itself. What does it actually look and feel like to free the mind? So Sāriputta lays out these 4 different paths to what's called Citto Vimutti, or mental freedom. And at first glance, they seem completely different, right? You've got the immeasurable path, which is all about expanding love. Then you have nothingness, which focuses on an absence. Emptiness is an insight about the self, and signless is about letting go of all mental pictures. But then, and this is the genius of it, Sāriputta reveals a much deeper truth. He basically says that while the names on the doors might be different, they all lead into the exact same room. The methods might be distinct, but the final destination is one and the same. So what's the one thing that connects all these paths? What's the common enemy they're all designed to defeat? It's these mental poisons. Greed is what creates limits and makes the mind measurable. Hatred is what creates a something out there for us to get stuck on. And delusion is what creates all the signs and images we cling to. Every single path is just a different strategy for taking these down. Which leads us to the final, and maybe the most powerful takeaway from this entire incredible conversation. After digging into all these details about mind and reality, what is the ultimate state that we're actually aiming for? And there it is, the final unifying answer. Real, unshakable freedom, it doesn't matter how you got there, is defined by what's not there. It is a mind that is completely, totally empty of the 3 toxic roots that cause every bit of our suffering. And that's not an empty void. It's a mind that's full of boundless potential, precisely because it's finally, truly free.